Today, it's no longer a theoretical question. It happened. The only question we have left to ask is, why did it happen this way? How could it be that we have a government that's not religious overall, and we have an army that's not religious overall, and yet we say that this is the Geula? Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Aaron Sokol, and you're watching Parsha Inspired. Before we get to this week's topic, I want to just tell you over something that my friend Isaac Eisenberg just told me. I was sitting by Isaac and I told him over the story of Shlomo Carlebach's story. Shlomo Carlebach was getting on a plane and he sees a great Rosh Yeshiva getting on the plane. And at the same time, he notices a hippie woman who had just left her non-Jewish boyfriend and was coming to Israel to try to make a new change in her life. And Shlomo says that he went to the rabbi who happened to be sitting next to this woman and said, you have 12 hours opportunity to be able to do something and make a change in this person's life. And he said, but I have my books. I have to study Torah. Rav Shlomo went back to his seat and he fell asleep. And he wakes up and he heard the rabbi getting up as well. And he sees the rabbi and the rabbi comes to him and says, I got a taste of what you do your whole life. It goes without saying that Shlomo writes that eventually he met up with this woman many years later, and she attributes her entire change in life with this conversation she had on the plane. That was the suggestion of Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach to this great rabbi who actually followed his direction. And when I told this story to Isaac, he said to me, I want to tell you something that just happened. In their synagogue, on Mincha, on the afternoon prayer on Shabbos, they have a custom that if one of the boys in the shul begin their service in the Israeli army, they make a special blessing at the Mincha service, and they bless him that he should have Hatzlach, he should have success in his endeavors. He should come back safely and fulfill the prophecies of fighting the wars for the Jewish people. 3 months after he came back, he was in shul, wearing his hat and jacket, and he was down, but he had a gun on over his shoulder, and he knew that he was 3 months in the army because he remembers that event that they had in the shul where they made the Misha Berach for him. And he asks the boy, he's like, you're in the army now, you've been there for 3 months, please tell me the truth. Is it possible for a person to stay from and be inside of the army? Is it possible to person to keep Torah and mitzvahs in the army? Is there too many temptations? Is it so obvious that a person who joins the army is going to completely fall from the path and end up becoming non-religious? Is that really the truth? So this boy said just recently, I think it was last week, he said to Isaac, he said, I want to tell you the truth. I'm Chabad. And Chabad, we actually look to find the places in the world that have the least amount of Torah in it. And we try to find the places in the world where the Jews have strayed furthest from the path. And we precisely go there so that we could bring those people back. So if you ask me, is the army difficult? Is it possible that I will have temptations? And is it possible that I may sometimes succumb to my temptations? Yeah, it's very possible. But the work that I'm doing is so important. And furthermore, he said the following, which will actually change the entire perspective on how we view the dilemma that's facing the Jewish people right now today. There's a physical war and there's a spiritual war. And the spiritual war is internal within the Jewish people. And I think Isaac just touched, with this story, he touched on the nerve, the key nerve. Can we face the dirt? Do we have confidence in our Torah teaching to be able to go out and influence people? And in fact, will Eretz Yisrael, and furthermore, that's stage one, and stage two is, can Eretz Yisrael be built up by people who transgress the Shabbos? And that question was brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. Tzlafchad transgressed Shabbos. His daughters came to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, we want a piece of Eretz Yisrael. We want to inherit our father, who was a person who didn't keep Shabbos. The Netziv asks, of course they want a piece of Eretz Yisrael. Where else are they going to go? The Netziv answers there were two halves of Menashe. Menashe was the only tribe that got a portion outside of Israel and a portion inside of Eretz Yisrael. They could have chosen like their grandfather got, which was a portion outside. But the Netziv says they wanted a portion inside of Eretz Yisrael. They wanted that their father's name, Lama Yigara. Why should the land lose out the name of my father, their father, who transgressed the Shabbos? And Moshe Rabbeinu, once he saw that Hashem said, yes, these daughters get a portion in the land, Moshe Rabbeinu understood that the sin of Tzlafchad, that he transgressed the Shabbos, was only to teach the people the importance of Shabbos. Do transgressors of Shabbos have a portion in Eretz Yisrael? And this brings us to the real core question of what's happening right now. Because how could it be that we have a government that's not religious overall, and we have an army that's not religious overall, and yet we say that this is the Geula? And that's really a question that has been dividing Klal Yisrael for many, many generations. And it would be safe to say the following, and that is the following, and this is pretty simple, that we'll know whether or not this is true when Mashiach comes. But the Rabbonim like Reb Elchanan Wasserman, and the Satmarov, and the Panovicharov, and Reb Aaron, and all the questions that existed 100 years ago about whether or not the redemption can happen through people who violate Shabbos, that was a theoretical question. Today, it's no longer a theoretical question. It happened. The only question we have left to ask is, why did it happen this way? We're entering into a time now called the 3 weeks. This is the time before Tisha B'Av, before the day of Tisha B'Av is when the Jews were exiled from Eretz Yisrael. And Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, is the day when this period began. The walls fell, The Jews worshiping the golden calf was a belief in a new Mashiach, a belief in a make-believe Mashiach. A Mashiach that can do everything for you. It's made out of gold. It's made out of money. But the message of this period of time is that we need to do our part. We need to do our work. We need to add to the equation. We need to be confident that if we're doing Hashem's work, if we're reaching out, if we have a responsibility, if it is a mitzvah to fight the battles of the Jewish people, which is a separate topic by itself. We could talk about that. That is this Milchemes mitzvah? Especially now that most Jews are in Eretz Yisrael, I don't see why it's not a Milchemes mitzvah. Now, we could talk about this halachically. And if it's a Milchemes mitzvah, there's a price to pay for Milchemes mitzvah. Rabbeinu talks about this, many times. So it's quite possible that we have a chiyuv to go. I'm not speaking against Rosh Yeshivas. I'm only bringing the question that are we willing to face the dirt? Are we willing to get dirty so we could bring God's glory? And that's what Pinchas did. Pinchas was willing to get dirty to bring God's glory. The Medrash says that Tzlafchad, he only sinned so the Jews will know the sanctity of Shabbos, so that he should be killed and the world and the Jews will witness him being killed and know how holy Shabbos is. Meaning an Avera Lishma, doing an Avera for the right reason, transgressing for the right reasons. So do we know who the builders of Eretz Yisrael were? Maybe they were holy, righteous people who came back in a reincarnation just because they didn't help build Eretz Yisrael. Abai, Reb Zera would kiss the stones of Eretz Yisrael. So think about that. Think about the love that we should have for Eretz Yisrael and the love that we should have for people who built up Eretz Yisrael. Thank you so much for watching. Please give your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Shalom from Ramat Beit Shemesh.